really do listen to everything he says. I probably shouldn't say that out loud, so I'm really excited for him to be here. So thank you.
Good morning. How are you? That was a trip. I usually don't take the LIRR into. That was a fun morning.
She has to talk to you and say.
No, I'm fine. I definitely understood what feeling cattle meant. Yeah. So, I thank you so much for having me to speak with you this morning. And Michelle asked me to speak with you about raising confident kids. And I'm so glad she phrased it that way, because I've been asked to speak before, and the presenter actually labeled it as how to give your kids self-confidence and self-esteem. And that causes me an immediate problem when I get to the front of the room, because my belief is you can't. So that's the bad news, right? But what you can do is provide an environment and nurture that for them to get it themselves. So one of the things they can't do from you is rent self-esteem and self-confidence. They need to become owners of that. And the only way to become owners is through experience. For me, self-confidence is feeling you have the ability to navigate whatever challenge comes up successfully. Self-esteem, on the other hand, is the feeling that you'll be okay regardless of the outcome of that challenge. Yes? So this morning, for the short time we have together, what I'd like to share with you is some tools that you can take home immediately to share with your children, since we don't want them to be renters. We want them to be owners of self-esteem and self-confidence. And hopefully that'll help them nurture into confident individuals for the rest of their lives. So let me ask you with a poll of hands. Think for a moment back in your life, something that you consider was a great accomplishment for you that added to your self-esteem. Think back, maybe one event, might be a couple of events. So something in your life that you accomplished and you felt added to your self-esteem, would help you create it. Anyone want to share an event? Go ahead, thank you. What's your name?
Chris.
Chris, nice to meet you.
I was in the music business and I played music at a very young age. So I auditioned for performing arts high school when I was the old school.
Yeah,
which I'm old. And getting into that school. Just being accepted there.
Getting into the audition process.
All the hard work paid off to be
Wonderful.
accepted.
Excellent. How old were you when you got accepted, Chris?
12.
Excellent. Okay, what is your name?
Trumpet.
Cool. Okay. He doesn't know I'm in music.
You need to talk. You guys need to have dinner
Okay.
with me. We have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
Anybody else? So we have Chris, and he's speaking about getting into the performing arts school. Anybody else want to share? Lisa?
Well, I would say, again, going back to school, and I was lucky enough to be in a public school where yes was the common answer. So whenever you had an idea or something that you thought could be done there, we had a principal who would just say, let's go, let's give it a shot, let's do it. So I was taken by your definition with confidence. So you knew it was going to be okay regardless of the result. That's perfect. That we could do something, and if it worked out, that was awesome. And if it didn't, that was awesome too, just because you did it and you went for it.
Excellent. Excellent. Cool. Michelle?
It's funny, it's arts too. I remember it really changed my life in freshman year of high school when I was cast as one of the leads in the musical, which had, like, to be a freshman, to be given that opportunity wasn't something that was normal. And I remember, and I still know this woman who cast me and how she really changed my life by giving me that chance to do something that I didn't even think was on the radar, and it really changed the way, it really changed the path of my life,
Right.
that decision.
Was that when I was in Fort Wolf?
Yeah, you did say that. You did say that.
I remember. That's probably more from a negative side. I remember in my senior year getting in trouble for something that I had done, but not to the extent that I was being punished at private parochial school. And I remember driving my car home to the house after being told to go home from school and suspended. And my mother standing in the garden in her pajamas. When I got out and I thought, oh my God, and all she said to me was, did you do it? And I said, I did. And also, get your clothes, wait for me here, you're going to deal with it and go back to school. And I remember the confidence came that I had to stand up for it and take punishment, but she also was going to back me, but that I had to do it and fight for it.
Excellent. That's good. I'm going to come back to that. What's your name?
Michelle.
Michelle. Oh, okay. Michelle. Go ahead.
I just remember my dad is a lawyer, and so we would sit down to dinner, and if you had something that you talk about things, and often I disagreed with him. Usually I lost the fight, because I didn't have enough supporting evidence. But there's a movie that I really liked, and he really hated it. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to work really hard to convince him. And at the end of this conversation or debate, he just stopped and he said, that was really good.
Wow. What's your name?
Guthrie?
Guthrie.
Hi.
Two more mistakes.
My name is Gail.
Hey, Gail.
I remember being in 6th grade, and I too am very old, and we weren't allowed to wear pants in school.
Okay.
It was the middle of winter, and I heard that the girls in the school across town were wearing pants already, and I said, well, why can they wear it and not us? And that's the big one, women's libs, so I made all my friends make signs. Not that, who knows if it was even connected a little bit, but I said it's not fair. We all brought signs to school. Of course, we've done the principal's office, but my mother came in and said she's absolutely right, and they changed the rule.
They changed the rule because of you?
Not because of me, well, they already done that, but we sort of made the point that we should also be included in, wear pants.
Thank you for sharing that.
And you haven't stopped since that. That's incredible.
She's still wearing pants.
She's still wearing pants.
And making signs.
I'm making signs.
What's your name?
Gigi.
Gigi.
Yes, I was in the 5th grade and PS 199 had a band, and I was playing the flute. And my music teacher had picked 3 of her best players, and I was surprised that she picked me to rehearse so we could get into an orchestra, a high school orchestra they had, one of the best schools, I couldn't remember. And I was surprised that she had picked me as one of the best players. So I went in with Saturday, I was scared, I practiced all week, practice. I did all kinds of music by memory and stuff. And so when I went in, I went with my father. My father's the type of man that he was very negative when it came to me. So I went and I told my father and I went in, and I was nervous. And I played the music they asked me to play. I played it, some of them, like 2 of them by memory. I didn't have to look at the sheet. And they were amazed. Next thing you know, the man says, she got in. And so I felt kind of proud of myself, but throughout the whole time, I was like, I'm not going to make it. You know, I was like negative. And then the man comes in and tells my father, she got in. And it was one of the best orchestras that we were trying out for. One thing was, I was worried, and I wondered why she picked me, because I didn't think I was so good. But when I got in that orchestra, everybody, my sister was proud, but she was playing too, but she didn't get picked to go in. And I mean, I was like, yeah, I got in, yeah.
Congratulations. That's a perfect transition for me right there. So thank you guys so much for sharing it. Even early in the morning, well, early for me, I guess. Thank you for jumping in and participating. Sometimes trying to get that information, because you're sharing a piece of you that's a little personal. I very greatly appreciate that. And the one thing I see that's common about that, whenever I do that type of poll, is one common thing about the thing that created self-esteem for you. Is that it set outside of your comfort zone. It was a little bit scary when you took it on, right? And it was a little bit bigger than you. So for me, self-esteem really is that feeling you get, that's called growth. It's actually the expansion of your comfort zone. We call that feeling pride. Yes? Yeah. And if it didn't have a little bit of fear involved in it, people don't usually call it off when I take that poll. There has to be that element that it was bigger than me when we started, but I'm bigger than it when we ended. Yes? Does that make sense? And that is probably the key to assisting your children in gaining their own self-esteem. And there are the questions, I can hear the questions in your head already about that process, which we'll get into in a little bit, okay? Just let me set some stage for you about that, some context. So, to give you a quick tip on how to nurture it first, let's start with this. I like, in one of my books, In Coffee with Ray, Ray is this sort of wise sage that this disillusioned piano teacher, because my background is music as well, this disillusioned piano teacher meets in a cafe. And this wise sage gives him the secrets to life and whatever else he needs to find out. And in one of the meetings, they meet at a baseball, an indoor baseball training ground. And there's a baseball diamond, and Ray makes this word up called diamond distinctions. And the one, I'll share with you more about them in a minute, but the one I want to make right now is the difference between a compliment and a validation. And the validation is a wonderful, wonderful way to get your children internally focused. Because self-esteem and self-confidence is really about your internal reward, not the external judgment of what you did, but your internal evaluation of what that is. Okay? So, your son or daughter comes home. How many have more than one child? Okay, how many? Okay, 2. Any 4? Two, okay. Okay, so, and then everyone else just a single, okay, great. So,
You can use that.
yeah, I see this.
Okay.
Single child. Okay, so the difference is this. Your child comes home with a good grade, and you can simply go, hey, that's a great grade. Congratulations. And that's wonderful. It's certainly better than not saying anything. Yes? But on the flip side of that, what that really does is it focuses them which way? Yeah, on the judgment. Right, on the judgment. And ultimately, someday they're not going to be judged in a light that's favorable to them. And that, if they're always externally focused on that, they're going to have a challenge. Okay? So instead, that's the compliment. The validation is more about how I feel about what you did. Okay? And it sticks a lot more powerfully, especially to kids who self-esteem is still in development, tweens and teens, right? It sticks a lot better. So the validation sounds like this. The first level of validation, I would like you to try to use the second one. Sounds like this. I'm really proud of the grade you have. But do you see the problem with that? That would be a better than, that's a good grade. The problem is what? I'm still focused on the grade, right? So instead, what I want my children, my wife and my students that I teach to focus on is the feeling. So here's the change. I'm really proud of how proud you are of what you accomplished. And the grade means nothing to me. I honestly don't know what my son's grades are. I just know he's really excited about learning. He works really, really hard. And someone told me he's doing really, really well. But what to me really well means is he's happy about his grade. Okay? So the difference between the compliment speaks about the judgment. The validation speaks about the feeling. So it sounds again like this. And you'll have to say it to get it used to rolling off of your tongue. You know, everyone goes, oh, it's funny, I train a staff of music teachers, and often we'll speak and they go, oh, I got it. And then I'll say, okay, say it. And it doesn't come out, right? So part of that process is becoming consciously unskilled, which again I'll talk about in a moment. So, any questions about validations and compliments? Difference? Go ahead.
Well, I remember reading an article in the New York Times that you shouldn't praise your children in an empty way, you should praise their effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that you worked so hard, I see an improvement, how does it feel?
Yeah, how does it feel?
Instead of just saying, oh, you did great, you know, and then,
yeah,
and I can't remember what else the article said, but it was, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a really valid point about validation, you know. When I go into a private piano lesson, I still teach sometimes, is I'll never ask a kid, did you practice this week? Because every kid, if he's intelligent, is going to say,
Yes.
of course, all 7 days. What I'll ask them is, what do you feel proudest of that you accomplished this week? Because the motivation for practicing doesn't come from me, it eventually has to come from you. You know, external motivation, pain motivation, is wonderful catalyst for getting the ball rolling, but it's horrible for keeping it moving. Eventually, it has to turn to a pleasure-based motivation.
I was gonna sort of say something in a similar vein. Like when I was growing up, lovely parents and everything.
We always defend our parents, don't we?
I was really smart, believe it or not, and everything came really pretty easily to me. And so I was praised for being smart, but I think you need to really be praised for your hard work, because you get to a point in your life where you do have to work harder. It doesn't just come like that. And you need to be able to be resilient and to put that hard work in, instead of saying, oh, it didn't come right away, so I guess I'm just not good at that, I'm gonna give up.
About that, I agree, absolutely agree with you.
And also knowing that is a spark.
Great.
Outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, because you don't, sometimes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, go ahead, Chris.
On your comment about being proud of the fact that they're proud of their grade.
Yeah.
So what if, this is
I know where you're gonna
my
go.
daughter, but what if your kid has a low expectation of themselves, and they go, I'm proud I got this grade, it's not a great grade, and you know in your heart they can do better.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's sort of the know, the gorilla in the room, isn't it, when I bring that up? So again, they have that lower expectation of themselves. And first thing you have to do is accept the fact that they have the lower expectation, right? Because we can certainly get into a power struggle with them, and if they're tweens and teens, we're probably going to lose unless we put a lot of effort into that power, right? So, sort of, I don't see it as giving up, I see it as surrendering, and to me there's a complete difference between giving up. Giving up is like, I'm done, and surrendering is sort of an acceptance in that whole process, right? So the acceptance is, so I'll give you a perfect example you on the side. So one of my students said to me once, I got all the work we planned done in the first day of my practice this week. And I said, so you want me to celebrate that with you? Well, I got all the work done. Like, okay, so that's a student I have strong rapport with, because that's key to how hard I'm going to push, isn't it? And we're assuming you have strong rapport with your children, so you can push a little bit. I said, so the question begs to be asked, what did you do for the other 6 days?
Yeah.
But I got it all done the first day. I'm like, okay, I understand. And the piece is 3 pages long, and you mastered the first 4 lines. In my infinite wisdom, what do you think I would have told you to do if I was here on day 2? And he said, do the next lines? I'm like, yeah. And he got it. And the next week was, here's what I did in the first day, but here's what I did in the subsequent days, right? So the key is meeting them on their plane for me, which is that, okay, so you're okay with the 78 right now, and you feel at this point for you that's the best you can do? Yeah. Okay, would you like any information from me? And usually they'll say no. And then you have to be quiet, because you did ask, right? But they might go, well, okay, if you happen to have one of those magical days. For me, the magical days, I think if I had to give one piece of parenting advice, is that you need 1/2 an hour in the car, in the dark, with your child a week. I learned more about my daughter driving her home 1/2 an hour in clarinet lessons, because everyone's brave. We don't have to look at each other. I'm driving. She doesn't have to make eye contact. It's dark. And the confidence level goes
You
right
live in
up.
the city if you're on the subway.
Close your eyes. So in answer to your question, meet them on that plane, but then also, you know what, when you're ready, when you're ready, I might have some information on how you can even feel prouder. Not do better, but feel prouder when you're ready.
And then what do you do?
Wait,
No. Now they come to you and they say, okay, I'm ready.
I don't know what that information, I don't know, that's a case by case, Lisa, okay? So depending upon, if you see that they're not studying enough, you might want to discuss study habits. If you see that, like, for instance, my daughter Phoebe, you'll hear more about Phoebe in a minute. She's the creative one in the house, okay? She's the one that came down when she was in 2nd grade and dressed herself for school and was in paisley tights, a velour striped shirt that had none of the colors of the paisley tights. I think she had mismatched shoes. She may not have been wearing a sock, okay? And a taffeta tutu, and some of her hair sticking out to the side of her head. And she came down and I'm going to school today. She had a big smile. And I went, okay. And I thank goodness that our preschool teacher knew that we didn't dress her. Because we walked in and Mrs. Brown said, oh, I see Phoebe dressed herself this morning. Congratulations, Phoebe. And I said, thank you, Mrs. Brown. So with my daughter Phoebe, a perfect example of that, Chris, is that she took physics. She's now a freshman in college, right? She took physics in high school in her 12th grade. And she failed her first test. And she was working until 2:30 in the morning. Her boyfriend, who was already in college, was a physics major. He was tutoring her, okay? And he was tutoring her because I was watching the conversation. Yes. No, it really was. Unless she had that quick screen shift when I came in there. And the school teacher said, don't worry about it, she's going to get it. Sometimes it clicks later in the year for kids. Okay. We hired another tutor. It's not clicking yet. She went to every extra help session that teacher had. And still bombed the fight. The teacher said, in 25 years of teaching, I've never seen a kid work this hard and not get it. Guess what? She's not going to be a physicist. And that's completely okay with me. And here's the better part. It was completely okay with her. Okay?
She tried.
What would you ask for, right? Obviously, what would you ask for? But more importantly to me, it showed me there's a level of self-esteem there. That's okay. The result, even though she had all the tools, wasn't what she desired. But she walked out whole. And that's the key there, is walking out home, okay? So, as a parent, I see myself as a shipbuilder. And I have roughly 18 years to make this ship seaworthy. And then we launch it off on its port with a nice bang of champagne, and it goes off. And it's going to navigate its own ports, hopefully, but when it gets banged up a little bit, it comes back to home port a little bit, yes? Here's the problem, is I don't know what kind of ship I'm building. The only person that knows what kind of ship I'm building is one of my kids, my child, right? That person. When Phoebe taught me this lesson when she was 3. When she was 3, I came home and she was drawing. I came home from work and she was drawing. And I was at least experienced, because she's the middle child. You probably should have guessed that by the fact that she came down with a tutu. I was at least wise enough as a parent at that point to never ever tell a child what their drawing was. Because their tree could actually have been a lollipop, and then you ruined it. Yeah. Right? So I would walk in and say, "Hey, Phoebe, that's really cool. What are you drawing?" Yeah. And she said one of the most profound statements that has shaped how I parent that I've ever heard, and it came from the mouth of a 3-year-old. What she said was, she finished scribbling a little bit, and it was scribbled to me, by the way. She looked up at me and she said, "I don't know, Dad, I haven't found my picture yet." And I went, God, you know, yeah, shy, I don't know, Dad, I haven't found my picture yet. And I suddenly realized as a dad, or as a parent, isn't that what we're trying to help them do? Is find their picture, or build their ship. I don't know if if your child has an ocean liner, a speedboat, a fishing boat. Phoebe probably has a raft. Okay, it's tied together with some type of string, okay? But it doesn't matter to me because it's her raft, okay? And my job is to give her the tools to build that raft, okay? And the tools that are important to me aren't the tools of what to learn, which is curriculum, but more importantly to me, the tools are how to learn. Because regardless of what you learn, for the rest of your life, you will need to continue to do so. And if you have what I call an ineffective learning process, or ILPS, ILPS, you're always going to struggle. Because there are certain inherent obstacles to learning that you will come up with, whether you're in a job, or whether you're trying to navigate college, or whether you're trying to navigate learning how to be a parent. They will always come up, and how you handle them will directly affect how well your situation comes out. So let's talk a little bit about those. We talked about diamond distinctions. Tell me if you've had your child come home and ever say, "This is too hard, I can't do this." Have you heard that one? Yeah. Like, "This is too hard, I can't do this." If you haven't heard it, then you might want to shake your child to make sure they're awake. Because your child's going to say that, right? So we spoke about those diamond distinctions. And to me, a diamond distinction is a little word change here that makes a tremendous change out here in the end. It's a big lever for me that shifts the thinking from an emotional stop sign. So say to yourself a minute, just I want you to say, and when you say it, listen inside what's going on. "This is too hard, I can't do this." Just say it to yourself a minute if you want. You can say it out loud if you like, it's fine. I want you to feel that statement a minute. So, when you say that, can you sense the stoplight that goes on for you? The question of your own potential? That's not okay for me. So what do? A little tiny change. Say this now. "This is new and uncomfortable." Do you feel inside at least the red light turned to yellow? It might not have gone full green yet, but we don't have a stop sign anymore. Yes, do you feel that? This is new and uncomfortable. Because basically anything you have ever learned from the moment you started to walk was new and uncomfortable. And it doesn't question your potential. Yes? This is new and uncomfortable. That little change, my son is 13, and we went into school this year, and he wrote a poem. And he was the first 12-year-old to read Coffee with Ray. And if you ever get a chance to look at the acknowledgments and lessons with Matt, the second book, he was also the only person, I had sent it to professional editors to catch I had a chronological problem. And he so gently, from his father's fragile ego, presented it to my wife first to make sure I could handle the bad news, because it was already in print. And I didn't realize what he called from the book until I read the poem. And he said in the poem something to the extent of, I recognize that anything that looks hard to me is not hard, it's just new. It's like, yes. Might actually be sticking. So that's one diamond distinction you can use when you go home, because you can guarantee by the end of the day someone's going to say, this is too hard, if they got homework to do. Well, let me ask you a question. Is it really hard, or is it just new and uncomfortable? And it just
Now, what if
Frame
they
it for them.
insist it's hard?
Okay, so then how would you make it easier? What could we do? Notice again, who has the control over the process here? Me or them?
Yeah.
Well, they think so, but I'm leading, aren't I? Right. But yes, so
The illusion of choice.
that's right, exactly. So yeah, if it's still too hard, well, how can we make it easier? And I'm going to speak about that when I get to the comfort zone in a minute,
I
okay?
find it so interesting though when I give my kids that, because my kids are like in theater and so they really have to put themselves out there a lot and there's nerves around that, even if they're confident there's nerves. And there's times where they look at me and they're like, I'm nervous and I don't know why, like, why am I so nervous? And as soon as I say, well, because you haven't done this before. Of
And what
course
happens?
you're nervous. And they're like face, they're like, wow, that's why. Like just giving them permission that this is actually a really common feeling.
That you're
and this
supposed
is-
to have.
You're supposed to have, instead of saying, like I'm really careful not saying like, oh, don't be nervous.
No.
Like in my head, I'm so nervous for them. Like,
You know-
I'm nervous too, but to give it, they just like relax because they're like, oh, okay, like I can have these nerves and still do it anyway. It's like they just relax about it as opposed to like resisting it and be like, no, you can do it.
Yeah, because
Like,
the biggest problem really about nerves, if you think about it, is the subtext, which is I'm not supposed to be feeling this.
And it means you care. You
Yeah.
You care about
Yeah,
it.
right.
And I was
I mean, I'm 51, I've been performing like Chris since I'm 12, okay? And when my students do recitals, I look at them and I say, how many are you nervous? And I'm like, so most adults will tell you don't be nervous, but let me see, don't be nervous. Did that work? And they're like, no. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna tell you that. I said, be nervous, but let me tell you what's gonna happen because you're nervous. Because if you're nervous, that means you're not outside your comfort zone, which means you don't get a chance to have that awesome feeling of pride. Right? So it almost becomes a welcoming feeling. Wow, I'm nervous, I'm about to grow. I'm about to get a piece of my own self-esteem again. Yes? So that's one diamond distinction. Let me share with you another one, especially with tweens and teens. You cannot demand from them anything, you can only invite. Yes? And you can invite. I can take you to a buffet, and I can't force you to eat, but I can invite you to eat, and you can choose to or not choose to.
My dad used to say you can lead a horse to water,
But
but a
you can't
pencil
lead-
must be led.
But what?
But a pencil must be
Oh,
led.
yeah. So another distinction for you, yes? So it sounds like this. When you're ready, you might want to try. Or when you're ready, I have some information for you. And for Phoebe, we've been waiting about 7 years for her to ask. It's apparent she's not going to, which is fine, because she seems to be navigating it all fine. You know, she doesn't have to receive all the information that comes into her, especially if it comes from us. And there is a certain amount of pride, it's odd, but a certain amount of pride for me that she's figuring out on her own. You know, I have faith that before I die, she'll come and ask. But it's okay if she doesn't. It's really okay if she doesn't. You know, we can sit and let her figure it out formally, which is fine. You know, and often the best response to Phoebe is, I really don't know the answer for you, but I'm pretty confident you'll figure it out yourself. And that'll do one of two things. She'll actually figure it out, or she'll go, God comes down, and, well, what do you think of this, Dad? Okay? So that's another diamond distinction. Here's another one for parents, a big one. This one has little to do with your kids, more to do with you, which is the difference between react and respond. Okay? So the only power you really have in your life to create it is the power of choice. Right? There will be events that happen, and whether you believe they're predestined to happen, or whether you believe that life is really, you can subscribe to the theory of chaos, doesn't really matter. Because the only thing, you know Jack Canfield is? So Jack Canfield wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul and all the wonderful chicken. So I give him credit for this because this is not my own thinking. But he says that he uses this wonderful equation. Right?
Use this fairway card.
Wait, you know what, wait, I need to teach you. And don't worry, I'll tell you anyway. He says, E plus R equals O. E plus R equals O. So if I said, I gotta do this on the board.
Maybe that, or maybe it's a different board.
Yeah, try it.
Oh, I'm writing on the board that can't be erased.
I don't know.
Yeah, try it.
Okay, so, no, it's not the board. So.
There's one more black one.
Let's try it. So what he says is that the events in your life are going to be the events in your life, right? So if I say this is 5, and I want this to be 7, and you only have control of R, what does R have to be?
Yeah.
2.
Right. So if I want to change this to 9, if I want to change this to 9, and this is a given, this has to be 4, right? So the events of your life plus your response, not your reaction, leads the outcome, comes up to the outcome. So if you want to change the O, you have to change the R. Okay? And here's how you do it. And I'm going to ask you to be kind to yourself when you learn this, because most people beat themselves up when they hear this. Which is, you need to not have that knee-jerk reaction, right? Because the knee-jerk reaction gives you exactly what you had before, because it's a knee-jerk reaction. You need to put in the second book, in Lessons with Matt, coined a term called the gap. You know, mind the gap, watch the gap, as I heard this morning coming in. And the gap, though, stands for something different for me. It stands for grab another possibility. And it's that moment from when something happens that you don't react, but instead you now respond. And you think a moment. And the question you ask is very simple. What do I want? And the clearer you can answer that question, the better your response will be. And sometimes, what do I want might be, I don't know. And then the response is, I really don't know what to do right now. And that's completely okay. Probably one of the most difficult things a parent can say, I don't know. But it's a wonderful question of possibility to be able to say. I don't know. And here's what I found out about I don't know. They can figure that out themselves a lot of times. They really don't need me. Okay? And it empowers them. So, I said be kind to yourself, because when you do this, a lot of times I found when people are learning the difference between a reaction and a response, their response is late or latent. So like an hour later they'll go, oh, I could have done it this way. It's a little delayed, right? So in the sort of the pyramid of your skill set, the first skill set is what I call unconsciously unskilled. Okay? Which means I don't even know I don't know. Ignorance is bliss. Yes? The second skill set is consciously unskilled, which is I know I don't know. It's called awareness. The third skill set is consciously skilled. This is where I call it work. Right? This is where you have that latent response. You know what to do, but you're late on it. And the final skill set is called consciously unskilled. Excuse me, consciously skilled. No, unconsciously skilled. Thank you. And that's this level of mastery. That's when you automatically take a moment before responding and wait and see what you want. So in this process, I challenge you to be kind to yourself. Because while you may walk out of here with, oh yeah, react, respond, your responses will be latent until you start to make it a habit. Then it becomes a lot easier. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Lisa. That's where you had a question.
Yeah, well, it's more of a statement, so I can sort of get it out of the way. And maybe other people are thinking this too. I get all of that, I hear it, and it's very, very valuable, and it's something I work on constantly. But what's underneath it, and for me at least, all of the time, here in the city of New York, which is different, I think, in the suburbs, is the constant pressure of this result right here matters for this, and this. So, you know, like, there's not time, if the feeling of there's not time in 7th grade to let them figure it out. Because damn it, you know, the test at the end of the year just, it impacts so much. What school they're going to get into, blah, 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 blah. Like there's this boogeyman out there constantly that this decision or this grade or this action means something much more than the kid can even see for themselves. So there's that constant, I find myself, sometimes it feels like the razor's edge because I want her to have that. And then I feel at times like if I left her to that, then like the sky, you know, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. It feels like Chicken Little. You know, I know that. So that's where the biggest challenge is is balancing that for me and not getting it all over her.
Yeah, so your expectations on her. So what happens if she doesn't get into that?
But it doesn't even feel like my
No,
expectation.
it's the expectations of here.
Right.
Yeah, I guess you can buy into that, or I know you've done trading yourself too,
Yeah.
so, or you can choose not to, right? You know,
Right.
Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book, you know Malcolm Gladwell, right? He's written Blank, he's written Tipping Point. You want to read it right now, it's called David and Goliath. Has anyone read that yet? Yeah. Wonderful book, and he said something really important about, you know the story of David and Goliath, right? David slew Goliath, and he was the big giant, and he wasn't supposed to be able to do that. Well, according to when you really read if you read the stats, David had a huge advantage.
I know, I was just.
Yeah, because of how wars were fought in that time, okay? So here's my point about that, is one of the things it speaks about is that there was a young lady who had the choice to go to Harvard for a chem degree, I think it was, or University of Maryland. What would you send your child probably if you could afford to do either one? Most people would choose Harvard because of its prestige, right? Except her grades in Harvard, when she finished up in chem, was at the bottom of the class. Those same grades at the University of Maryland would have put her in the top of the class. And if you're a recruiter from a graduate school or a business, are you looking at the bottom of the class in any university or the top of the class? You're always looking for the top. So his argument is that Harvard had a huge disadvantage for this particular girl, okay? And it would be better for her to be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. Yeah. And I have to say that's true. Our eldest daughter, Brianna, she went to a huge school. She was going to Indiana University. She was a Hoosier, right? She transferred. She's now at a school that's 2,200 kids. And I have a feeling she's about to become a big fish in a really small pond. And that's going to be wonderful for her. Absolutely wonderful. Okay? So, I guess that's the question, right?
Can I just say one thing to myself every day? Pray to kids for what they are, not what they're going to be.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
No, that's really, that's not really, yes, of course, yes. That part I get, but I'm not even talking about, it's the what I feel is coming from the other side, you know?
I think that you also have to,
You know, when
you
I
have
go
to block it out. Like you can't, you gotta block it
That's the
out.
challenge, right?
But it's also like you have to block it out because, like to me, that feeling of I have to do this in 7th grade. No, like Jude is who he is in 7th grade, and how he does on all this stuff is really a true indication of where he should go to high school. If I push him and do this and do that, it's not a true indication of who he is. He has to find who he is, and he'll get into the high school that's right for him, and just trust him.
Like you were saying, the idea that, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah, it'll be okay.
That feeling that like there's gonna be further pressures in life, whether it's to get married, to have kids, to be a doctor, to be an actress, all those things, to be, get manicures or to go out and hike the Pacific Crest Trail. I don't know. But yeah, you gotta have that feeling of, well, I'm gonna be okay if I make this choice or that choice. And I might make a mistake, but I'm gonna learn from it.
Yeah. I'm going to skip, I know Michelle said I need to be out of here by 9:55, so I'm going to have to skip a section, but I'll just quickly, my belief is learning shouldn't be fun, and I think we do our kids a disservice by telling them it should be. I hate those signs, I really don't. We make learning fun. Oh gosh, they make me crazy. Because it sets them up for a real bad situation. Learning sucks, okay? Because learning, what it ultimately means is you're about to do something you can't do, which means you're going to fall off the bike and scrape your knees, and you're about to get hurt a little bit. You're going to be okay, but to give you this idea that it's always supposed to be fun, because what happens is, when it's not fun, you panic. Case in point, I come home when my daughter was in 2nd grade. I hear her crying from the dining room. She's doing her homework. Never heard her cry when she did her homework before. So I walked in, and I said, what's going on? And she did the, I can't do this, this is too hard. And this is before I had come up with the cool idea about doing what's not hard to do. So I had to scramble for another solution. And instead, I looked at her, I suddenly realized, and I said, no, you know what, Brianna? You're learning now. I says, what you did for kindergarten and 1st grade was knowing. And there's a huge difference between knowing and learning.
Yeah.
That's 8th grade right now.
Yeah. And I said, the struggle you feel right now is learning. Now, would you like me to help you or assist you in figuring that out? Yes. And we reconditioned for her that it was panic, because the panic was, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Right? No, you are. Let's calm down a second, okay? So let me talk quickly about that, so I don't need, because this is important. If you look on the book, one of the things one of my things, if you look at the O, that O is a coffee stain. If you put a mug on a cup, okay? You'll have to find out how it goes by reading coffee. Right, I can tell you. But in the center of that, in this, which one broke? Okay, cool. So in the center of that O is your comfort zone. And there are wonderful feelings associated with comfort zone. The most important one is safety. Eventually, it's also boredom. Because it's all the stuff you can do. Okay? Out here is what I call the frustration zone. And the only things you get as a reward, or as feedback from a frustration zone, is feeling overwhelmed, feeling frustrated, feeling fear. It's horrible for learning. Okay? The sweet spot is in here. And I call that the learning zone. And in the learning zone, things are enticing. They're not intimidating. Here's the kicker though. Who gets to determine what this zone versus this zone is? They do. All of the time. They get to determine. So, anybody ski here? Anybody skiers? Okay, great. So, are you like Black Diamond skiers? Good skiers? Okay, so if I said we're all going skiing, okay, we'll go up to Vermont. We're going to go skiing, and some of you might not even get on the bus, okay, but let's say we'll start to go. And I say we're all going up to the Black Diamonds because it's the best view of the whole mountain. How many are going with me? You would. Okay, this one? That's fine. Because for you, that's somewhere in here. Yes? For us, it's somewhere out here. Now what if I said, well, you go, no, I don't want to do the Black Diamond. You said, I want to do, can you do the intermediate slopes? No. Will you do the beginner slopes? No. Will you put on the boots? I can do that. Will you clip them into your skis? Do I have to move? No, I can do that. Right? Who determines what this learning zone is? The learner. Often, outside is determinant of that. And what happens is, you come up with inappropriate challenges that frustrate them, and then they point the finger to you. I never want my learner to point the finger at me looking for solutions. I want them looking inside. I'm the mirror. Okay? I'm the coach. What's the difference between a coach and a player? Coach isn't on the field getting tackled. He's on the sidelines, telling the players what to do. Okay? So I'm the coach when I'm working with my kids. Frustration is the #1 learning killer and learning obstacle as far as I'm concerned. Okay? So what do you, the question is, well, that's great, what do you do about that, right? Speaking a little bit faster, but you guys are from New York, so that's cool.
Yeah.
I went to Nashville and I felt like I was had to speak so slow for them. So let's just talk about the frustration, okay? If we went to the gym and worked out and we started lifting weights, your body would start to give you some feedback that says that I'm getting fatigued. Yes? Okay? And if you ignore that feedback, it raises the pain a little high. It tells you, no, I'm really getting fatigued. And if you continue to ignore it, one of two things happen. The muscle completely gives out and stops working to fit it, right? Or injury. Exactly. Well, why do we understand that as a physical response, but don't get the emotional response, which is, I'm getting frustrated, until the bucket of water that's being filled up with frustration just overflows. We ignore it until it becomes too. I know as I was a piano student, all my books had the spines broken because I throw them across the room out of frustration because no one taught me how to handle it. Yes? So what has to happen is that you want to monitor it because the only thing you can learn when you're frustrated, if I want to take a plug at this, is how to handle frustration. You can't learn whatever it is you were trying to learn once you're fully frustrated. It's like that bucket being filled with water. Once the water flows all over the floor, you got to clean up the mess and see some of the bucket out before you can put some more stuff in it. So fatigue, that mental stress, is your mind's way of telling you we're about to get overloaded, just like the physical stress is your body's way of telling you we're overloading the muscle.
So, in that example with your daughter crying over the homework,
Yeah.
would there come a point where you would say to her, just stop now, just don't even do it right now because it's so overwhelming?
No, there would become a point that I ask her if she wants to do that. So let me go right there, okay? So there's only 3 things that you can, so one thing what you can do when you're frustrated is take a break. That break might be a minute, it might be an hour, it might be a day, I don't know, okay? It might be, as I've seen my daughter do, disenrolling in the college class. That's a big break, but it's a break, right? The second thing you can do is, I tell my kids this, you can ask for help from someone who may know more than you. Right?
I'm available.
Right. I have to know someone in the house, and I will.
My next door neighbor.
Right. Or what you can do is you can change the challenge so it's more appropriate. We're not ready to ski black diamonds, but I'll stand in the boots, because that's not even here for me, that's right here. Yes? And I will help them problem solve what that level is. Okay? So those are the only 3 things you can do when they're frustrated. The key is to give them control over handling it, because I don't want them renting that information from me. I'm not always going to be there for them. But I want them to have the tool to use. So often it's about, okay, remember what we do. What are 3 things we can do when we're frustrated? Take a break, and they know. Okay, no, I don't want to take a break. I want to keep working on it. That's my son. Okay, go ahead. And then he realizes later on, I call him and go, should have taken a break. Okay, that's great. I'm glad you realized that without me telling you, okay? So those are really the things that you want to do. And I use a wonderful little parable that you see as a nursery rhyme, but it is an incredible parable for educational wisdom. There was a young lady who was walking through the woods. She came upon a house. The door is open. Why you leave your house open in the woods? I guess it was in a safe neighborhood. But she came in. She tasted the first bowl of porridge. Remember the story, guys? It was too hot. The second one was too cold. The third one was just right. She went to sleep in the bed. Strange, but we'll accept it as a fairy tale. First one was too hard. Second one was too cold. So soft, thank you. Third one was just right. Who gets to determine that? She does. The same way you learn it does. And it's a wonderful parable, and I use it with my kids all the time. Have you got it?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
In terms of when kids and homework, and their frustration level, what I tend to do for my kids is to look for alternatives way of learning. And just be curious about it, all the methods to learn. Which kids at this age sometimes resist. They don't want to learn different from what they've been learning in the school. They don't want to get confused, etc.
Yeah.
At that point, I basically said to them, okay, it's up to you.
That's right.
Try to continue this way, just take a rest, or just don't do it if you don't want to see alternatives. And when it turns back is like 2-3 minutes later, they figure it out. Okay, so maybe there is some way that I can learn the same materials and then apply and go back and learn and apply what you learn and the style and adapt it to the style that they're learning in the school.
Right.
So I've been kind of successful teaching them math and teaching them different ways of learning math. I grew up in Ecuador and I went to school in Ecuador, so I have a few tricks, like I said.
Okay.
So I think it's a good method in
Good.
terms of
Yeah.
kids pushing back and things that are hard, because they are hard.
Yeah. You have a quick question, because we have to close out, right?
Sarah, when are students coming back into this room?
10:03.
Oh, okay.
Okay. 2 minutes. Go
It's just
ahead.
about that comfort zone. Do some kids just stay in that zone, or do they never get that validation you talk about, like comfort?
You know what? Some kids will go here. This is delayed gratification, this is immediate gratification, right? So you have to determine how much the gratification or the child does, they're willing to, 3 tries, I can't do it, I'm back to my comfort zone, that's up to the learner, and the more self-esteem they have, they're going to be okay, the greater they'll be to go step out, okay?
It's so interesting when you have more than one kid.
All different.
Like, one is like right at the grade, one is on the black side.
But I don't have to navigate that. That's the thing is because I asked them to navigate it for me. Let me give you one more piece before I leave, because I know this is about your kids and going home and using something, okay? But it's also about you. And one of the things I find as parents is that we can really beat ourselves up. And here's the thing is, my dad said something to me years ago when I was 14 and he had made a mistake. And he stepped up to the plate, that's how my family was. But he said something really interesting that set the stage for me as a parent. He said, I hope you can forgive me, but I've never had a 14-year-old son before. And our kids think that we know all the answers. We're trying to figure out our lives while trying to figure out theirs, right? So what I ask you to do is, with the information, I ask you to be kind to yourself in this process. Because Wayne Dyer said it years ago, he said that You are a human becoming, not a human being. So as you go home, you can become, okay? And you will become for the rest of your life, okay? I hope you got some valuable tools. I had, both of my books are available on Amazon because we're related. I have some discount codes if you're interested. Gives you a 35% discount on one and a 20% discount on the other. The only thing is I ask you to leave me a review.